Cassie, and welcome to the Mystery Meeting Chamber. Today, I'm going to be covering the unsolved case of JonBenét Ramsey. I'm sure many of you know this case, but I wanted to cover it because this December marks the 25th year anniversary of her murder, and it is still unsolved. I'm going to be diving into the family history a little bit before going into the details of the day. So, JonBenét Ramsey. He was born in 1943 in Lincoln, Nebraska. He attended Michigan State University, where in 1966 he earned the bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He also received a master's in 1971 for business administration. John had also joined the Navy and served 3 years in the Philippines and 8 years in active reserves in Atlanta, Georgia. Also back in 1966, he married his college girlfriend and later had 3 children together. Unfortunately, in 1992, there was a tragic accident and he lost one of his daughters to a car accident. John and his first wife did later divorce in 1978, but remained cordial for their children. In 1980, John would marry his second wife, Patricia Ann, and this is the mother of his children, Burke and JonBenét. In 1989, John had created a company, Advanced Product Group, which later merged with 2 other companies to become Axis Graphics. In 1991, he did sell this company to Lockheed Martin and remained on as the president and CEO of the Axis Graphics chapter. A little bit about Patricia Ann, or as many people know her as Patsy. Patsy was born in 1956 in Parkersville, West Virginia. Patsy attended college at West Virginia University, where she graduated in 1978 with a BA in journalism. While in college, she did win the title of Miss West Virginia in a beauty pageant. It is also said that her sister was into beauty pageants and have won some lesser titles herself as well. In 1980, she married John Ramsey, and they had 2 children together. Burke was born in 1987, and JonBenét was born in 1990. In 1991, the family had moved from Atlanta, Georgia, to Boulder, Colorado, for John's business. Burke Ramsey was John and Patsy's first child. Little is known about the details of his childhood, which is probably a good thing that it was not completely spread across the media. It is said that he might have been slightly socially awkward, but he did have many friends. He loved playing video games, playing sports, as well as watching sports. JonBenét herself was named after her father, who is actually named after his mother. So in a sense, she is named after both her father and grandmother. Her grandmother's maiden name was Bennett, and that name was given to John as his middle name, JonBenét. JonBenét was then shortened into a female form and made JonBenét. It is said that she was a very extroverted, very energetic, happy, loving, caring, very intellectual and funny child. She loved to play little practical jokes on people. She entered into several beauty pageants just like her mother and won many titles and awards herself. So let's take a dive into the day before JonBenét Ramsey was found murdered. This is actually Christmas Day, December 25th, 1996. The Ramsey family was known to be very into Christmas, extravagant decorations. They went all out for Christmas. 2 years prior, in 1994, their house was actually featured in the 11th annual Historic Homes for the Holiday. This meant that their house was actually decorated to the T, Christmas every room. And over 2,000 people had paid to go on a walking tour and view all the rooms in their house. This Christmas, however, did start out like any other. The children woke up, ran into their parents' room, woke them up, and wanted to go open presents. It is said that Burke was very excited about a brand new Nintendo 64, as well as several other gifts. JonBenét had gotten a bike and a jewelry kit, as well as many other things. After opening presents, the family then had a pancake breakfast and the children played with their toys. The neighborhood kids started coming over, excited to show them off all of their new toys and see what the Ramsey children also got. During this time, Patsy and John were preparing for their trip the next day to Michigan, where they were planning to meet one of John's sons from his first marriage. JonBenét really wanted to play with her new bike, but unfortunately, because the parents had to plan for their vacation trip the next day, they weren't able to take her out. This is actually deeply saddened John Ramsey later that he promised that he would get to take her out and never got to. She did, however, play with the jewelry kit outside of Burke's room while he and his friends played Nintendo 64. Later that night, they attended a Christmas dinner party at one of their friends' house. A picture was taken of JonBenét at this party, and unbeknownst to them, this was going to be the last picture taken of her alive. After the party, the Ramsey family did make a pit stop on their way home to drop off a few gifts at another friend's house. It is said that Patsy probably talked to her friends at their door for 10 to 15 minutes before heading back into the car and driving the rest of the way home. JonBenét had fallen asleep in the car, so when they arrived, John had carried her into her bedroom. Patsy had followed behind John in order to be able to change her into some sleepwear. She took off her shoes and vest that she was wearing to the Christmas party and changed her black pants into some long johns that were more comfortable for her to sleep in. Burke had also gotten ready and went to bed, and it is said that roughly 30 minutes to an hour after putting the children to bed, both John and Patsy went to bed themselves. The next morning, December 26th, Patsy had woken up around 5:30. She put herself together and started going down the back staircase to their kitchen. While going down the stairs, she noticed 3 pieces of paper. She picked them up and started to read it and realized it was a ransom note. She then rushed up the stairs to go check on JonBenét. She was not in her room. She went back to the master bedroom and awoken John and showed him the note. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want to see her in 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your bank account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter. Any deviation from my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied of her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise that you do not provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as the police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert the bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you will stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant surveillance, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory. SBTC. Despite the note saying not to call the police, FBI, or even talk to a stray dog, Patsy had called 911. After abruptly hanging up on the 911 operator, she then proceeded to call some of her family friends, a pastor, and some advocates of the town to come over to the house in order to support and comfort them in this time. Police arrived shortly before 6 a.m. to start their investigation. They were going to be treating this as a kidnapping because of the ransom note. In the note, it is said that the kidnappers would be calling between 8 and 10 a.m. The police had set up a wiretap and surveillance of the house in order to try to record or capture the kidnappers. 10 a.m. had came and gone, and no call from the kidnappers had came in. After some time, all of the police officers and detectives except one left the house to go reconvene back at the station in order to figure out their next plan. Detective Lisa Arndt was left in charge of the Ramsey family as well as all of their friends and pastors and people in the house. Anxiety started running very high in the house because no one knew what was going on or where JonBenét was. It is said that at some point, Patsy and some of her friends started cleaning the kitchen in order to calm their nerves. Detective Lisa Arndt had tried to make several phone calls to the police station to get backup in order to keep control inside the Ramsey house due to the anxiety levels. It was advised to her to tell John and some of his friends maybe they should go looking around the house to see if they could see if anything was out of place or strange or missing. While John was searching the basement level, which had several rooms in it, he went into the wine cellar, which apparently was previously missed by the police officers. There, he had found JonBenét's body on the floor. At first, he felt relief. He found his daughter, and he was so excited, but he ran up to her and quickly realized that she was no longer with him. She had duct tape on her mouth, and her hands were tied. He ripped off the duct tape and tried to untie her hands, but wasn't able to. He picked her up and quickly ran up the stairs to the living room, and he laid her on the floor. When other officers and detectives made it back to the house, they found Patsy Ramsey on the floor holding JonBenét's body, rocking and crying inconsolably. A coroner had made it to the house to do a cursory look over before moving her body to do a full autopsy in his lab. Now that JonBenét has been found, I'm going to go over a couple of different dates of things that have happened since then. On December 29th, the Ramsey family had flown back to Atlanta, Georgia, where they had family and could have support. On December 31st, 1996, JonBenét was laid to rest in Atlanta, Georgia, next to her half-sister. On January 1st, 1997, John and Patsy Ramsey do a 45-minute interview with CNN. It is said at this point that they did not have an interview with the police yet back in Boulder, Colorado. They were just questioned at the scene back on December 26th. On January 3rd, 1997, the ransom note has been revealed that it was written inside the Ramsey house with Patsy's notebook and a pen. Due to this information, John and Patsy fly back to Boulder, Colorado. The police also searched their summer home in Michigan for any evidence. John, Patsy, and Burke had submitted DNA evidence as well as handwriting evidence initially in this investigation. On March 7th, 1997, John had been ruled out as the writer of the ransom note. However, they could not completely rule out Patsy. There was many similarities in her handwriting. On March 8th, 1997, the police go back to the Michigan summer home of the Ramseys to try to find any handwritten notes they could compare. On April 3rd, another DNA test was ran. On April 30th, John and Patsy have their first formal interview of over 6 hours with the police department. On May 14th, the DNA results came back with no surprises, but no other details than that. On July 12th, 1997, the Ramsey family finally decided to pack up JonBenét's belongings from her bedroom and move them to their new home in Atlanta, Georgia. On July 14th, 1997, the autopsy report was finally revealed, which I will go into details of that in a little bit. In January of 1998, the police request another interview with the Ramsey family, but they refuse. Also in January of 1998, the police asked for the clothing that the Ramsey families wore on the 25th and 26th of 1996. A lot of time has passed, so that it is strange that they finally asked that long afterwards. On March 12th, 1998, a call for grand jury against the Ramseys was called. In June of 1998, Burke Ramsey was interviewed by the Boulder Police Department. Some say this is his first interview, but there are clips from a previous interview back in 1997. September 15th, 1998, the grand jury actually finally begins, after already picking their members months ago. The grand jury concluded October 13th in 1999. The DA came out to announce to the public that they were not bringing any charges against the Ramsey family. While the verdict of the grand jury is supposed to remain secretive, it was later revealed that they did say they should indict John and Patsy Ramsey, despite what the DA had said to the public. In June of 2006, Patsy Ramsey unfortunately passed away from ovarian cancer. She never got to find out who killed JonBenét. I would also like to mention that in September of 2016, Burke Ramsey did do an interview on TV with Dr. Phil. This video has been speculated a lot with his body language and the way he reacted to certain questions. To me, honestly, it seems like someone who is socially awkward and uncomfortable with this interview. You gotta imagine it has been 20 years of his life where his family has been looked at saying that they are murderers or they had something to do with this case. So now I want to go over some of the list of suspects. John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, and Burke Ramsey have always been on the list or in the eye that they could have had something to do with this. Also on the list of suspects, within a 2-mile radius of the Ramsey home in Boulder, Colorado, there's roughly 40 registered sex offenders that were all looked into. The Ramsey housekeeper was also investigated since she had a key to the home. A local woman had also called the police to let them know that her boyfriend, who lived with her, had came home on the night of December 25th very disheveled and dirty. He also owns a sweatshirt that says Santa Barbara Tennis Club, STBC, which is how the ransom note was signed. So it was a bit interesting. Also on the list of suspects was family friend Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus for the kids. It is said that he had a Christmas card or note to JonBenét letting her know that he had a special gift for her on December 26th, the day that she was found. I think one of the most interesting suspects in this case is John Mark Carr, who actually goes by a different name now and has undergone a sex change operation. In 2001, he was caught with child pornography and fled the States and went to Thailand to try to avoid being arrested. Years later, he emailed someone who was covering the JonBenét Ramsey case and said that he knew who killed JonBenét Ramsey and that he was involved. He was brought back from Thailand to the States to be investigated. DNA evidence, however, did rule him out, but still to this day, he claims that he was there when JonBenét Ramsey died and he knows who did it. I want to talk a little bit about how this case was handled in the media frenzy that followed. It is rather unfortunate that the house was not marked off as a crime scene. Maybe this is because it was originally thought of as a kidnapping and only JonBenét's room was taped off, not the whole house. Friends and family were allowed to come into the house, walk around, completely contaminating the house and the evidence. And since JonBenét Ramsey was the one who found his daughter, his DNA was then all over the room where she was found, as well as evidence that he took off of her and carried her upstairs. Patsy Ramsey also was holding on to JonBenét when the police arrived back at the house and getting all of her DNA all over it as well. The ransom note was also passed around between friends of the family, and all of their fingerprints were on it. This scene was just completely contaminated and so hard to be able to rule suspects out because their fingerprints and DNA were all over the house. Because JonBenét was found in the house, it is thought that the police immediately thought that John and Patsy had to have done it or had to have known what was happening. It is very rare that a kidnapping would happen and then you find the body in the house. It's just unheard of. Normally you would find it elsewhere. In many cases, family members are looked at first. The media caught on to this case and milked it for all that they could. It was all over the news. It's a wealthy, well-to-do family, and their poor, beautiful child had been murdered. Rumors flew around. There was crazy accusations of the family, of family friends. It was all posted out in the media, on TV, in newspapers, everywhere. It's no wonder that the Ramseys moved back to Georgia in order to try to get out of some of that light. Just imagine what that could have done or has done to their child Burke. I can't even imagine raising a child that is just having paparazzi and the media just in your face accusing you of killing your daughter. I also want to mention that this is 1 year after the O.J. Simpson trial, where there was a huge media frenzy over that. This was their next big story after that the media could really latch onto. It has been speculated that it had to have been a family member or a friend of the family because of where she was found and the ability to get into the house and know where everything was. There was a broken window in the basement, but due to a spider web, the police said it was unlikely that anyone could have gone through that window. Later on, a DA had called in Lou Smith, a retired detective with over 200 solved cases under his belt, in order to help with this Ramsey case. After reviewing many of the crime scene photos and doing an investigation himself, he came to the conclusion that it was an outside perpetrator that came in and killed JonBenét. He actually proved himself that you could get through that window. The police had ruled out that that window could have been used because it had snowed and there was no footprints. However, in the crime scene photos, on that side of the house, there wasn't snow, which was strange. Lou Schmidt himself had actually gone and showed how easy it was to open the grate that was covering the basement window, sneak inside, and actually land on a suitcase that was laid out next to that window. He also found scuff marks on the wall of possibly how an intruder got out. He climbed onto the suitcase, put his foot on the wall, and shimmied his way back out. I'm going to talk a little bit about the autopsy report now. So initially the coroner had done a cursory overview of JonBenét before they removed her to take her to the lab. This part of the video is where it's going to get a little sensitive, so if you need to skip forward, I'll go ahead and put a timestamp to after the autopsy report. In the autopsy, it had shown that JonBenét's wrists were bound above her head. She had a rope wrapped around her neck that was connected to a broken paintbrush, which is said to have been Patsy's, and it was turned into a garrote. If you don't know what a garrote is, it is a way of strangling someone by slowly rotating it around the stick, the rope around the stick, as it slowly tightens around the neck. She also had scratch marks around her neck and her body. The front side of her long johns and her underwear were covered in urine. There was also specks of blood in her underwear as well. They did do a exam where they ruled out conventional sexual abuse. They say they ruled out conventional because her hymen was still in place. It had not been broken, but there was trauma inside. They found a bit of a foreign object, like little pieces that they think might have been also part of the paintbrush. It also looked like she had been wiped clean. They reviewed her stomach contents and intestinal line and found a yellowish greenish substance which they believed to have been a fruit or a vegetable, most likely a pineapple. This is interesting because the morning of the 26th, there was a bowl of pineapples on the kitchen table with a spoon and a glass of tea next to it. There were 2 marks on her near her neck and on her back of 2 little points that seemingly came from a taser gun. Something that was not seen originally at the house but came out during the autopsy is that her head was severely fractured. Due to the lack of blood at the crime scene, they didn't realize that there was this bad of a head trauma. Now, something that can cause a lack of blood in such a blunt force trauma to the head was the fact that she was being strangled and there was the lack of blood flow to her head. It was also notated that there was 3 pieces of jewelry still left on JonBenét that she must have still been wearing when she went to sleep the night before. She had a necklace on, a ring, and a brand new ID bracelet that had her name across it, and on the underside it said 12/25/1996. So there's a lot of information in this case, and there's also a lot of hidden information in this case as well, because it is still an open case. There are a lot of opinions that the Ramsey family had some involvement with this, that they did something to their daughter. There's a lot of ideas that it was an outside intruder. Personally, I do believe it was an outside intruder. I would hate to think that anyone could do that to their own daughter. It is horrifying, the details of the full autopsy report, that anyone could do that to their own baby. Speculation against the family still exists to this day, and all John wants is to finally have some answers about who killed his daughter. There are DNA evidence that they have found that they now think belong to 2 different unknown male suspects. These 2 different DNA samples have been run through CODIS, but no match has been found. John still holds hope that one day that DNA evidence will find out who did this. Even in cases like the Golden State Killer, which years later, due to ancestry DNA, they found out who was the Golden State Killer. So maybe something like that will happen in this case. Personally, I really don't think that the family did anything to their daughter or they know anything about what happened. I would say that the only thing that they might have been involved with was the ransom note. Maybe they had awoken, realized JonBenét was gone. Maybe they thought she ran away and they had to make it seem bigger than it was in order to have a full force look for her. I would also like to mention that a month before this happened, November of 1996, a movie called Ransom was released in theater. So maybe that is also where the idea of a ransom note had came. In my opinion, I do think it was an outside intruder. I believe that someone had broken into the house, probably through that basement, in order to rob the Ramsey family. They were a very wealthy family. I'm sure that many of the things in their house were very expensive and easy for someone to take and make some money off of. If someone did break into the house and say JonBenét had woken up in the middle of the night and realized she was thirsty and went downstairs to the kitchen to get something to drink and ran into these intruders or robbers, they probably panicked and grabbed her or thought, hey, let's take her and we can get even more money out of this family. In the ransom note, the ransom amount requested was $118,000. That is an amount that John Ramsey had actually recently received as a end of year bonus from his company. At their house on December 23rd, they did have a large Christmas party. Maybe he had mentioned it or was excited and had said how much he made at that party, and someone had overheard and thought of this plan to come rob his house. Strangely enough, that night as well, I should mention that a accidental 911 call was made. The 911 operator tried to call back to the house, but no one answered. They also did send a police unit over to the house to check, and they did not let the police in, just said it was an accident. Someone was trying to order medication and accidentally called 911. Strange fact. But yeah. So back to the intruder theory. If they had ran into JonBenét Ramsey in the kitchen and thought, let's take her, they probably wanted to bring her back down to the basement to get her out. And this is when they tased her in order to silence her and carry her downstairs to the basement. That suitcase that was by the window possibly was them thinking that they could put her in it and then push her out of the window, so it didn't look like they were carrying a child out of the Ramsey house. But she wasn't able to fit into the suitcase. And that is what led to them killing her. It is my hope that someday this case will be solved. There is no time limit for finding justice. So that is all I have for today. I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on my first true crime video. I look forward to being able to make some more, and I hope you join me. So thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.